today I wanted to film my August wrap-up, which I read 11 books this month, and only 2 of them were graphic novels. One of them was a manga and the other one was a graphic novel, but all the others, all 9 others, are books. I even forgot that it was up to 11. I legit thought I only read 9, which is already a lot more than I usually read. Like, usually I read like 3, 4, occasionally 5 books. Like, the only times I got over 5 was when the month that I read mainly consisted of mangas, like the month where I read most of my Moriarty mangas and also Spy Family. This month, majority of them are books, and I'm up to 11. I mean, I think what the reason is that I was able to read so much was mainly because of the readathon that I participated in from Mel Reads, her Patreon. Just like the reading vlogs that I did for this month, I will leave a link to her channel and her Patreon down below, just so you can still join, because obviously now the readathon is over, but you should still join her Patreon because it's really fun. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about the 11 books I finished this month. It still sounds very weird to say 11. I mean, where is she? Where is 11? I think you can see her there. There's another one on my shelf, but yeah, you can just see her there. 11. The first book I read this month is God Killer by Hannah Kanner. If you watch my reader vlogs, you saw that I originally wasn't going to like this book, and I was considering DNFing it like 50% because it was going very slowly and I didn't really was invested in the story. But then I started listening solely to the audiobook. I didn't physically read it, I just listened to the audiobook while diamond painting, and it got a lot better after that. It was a lot of fun and I'm very excited for the sequel. I didn't think this was a series. I legit thought this was a standalone, but as usual I was wrong. Luckily this isn't the kind of book where I'm dying to get the sequel. I'm just like, okay, there's a sequel, I can't wait. Pure and simple. Now ask me how to explain this book. That is always an issue for me. You essentially follow, I think, 4 POVs. One of said God Killer, who is a woman who has some issues with gods, and she is one of the god killers, and so she, obviously, just like the name says, she kills gods. And she sets off on this journey to help a little girl who is essentially attached to a small god, and that small god doesn't have any memories of before he was attached to the little girl. Hold on, let me remember the fucking name. First of all, the god killer is called Kissin, and then the girl is called Inara, and then the little god is called Eligast. So yeah, so Eligast has been stuck to Inara, but Eligast doesn't remember anything from his life before he was attached to Inara. And the only reason I wanted to give this book a full shot, where I wanted to finish it, is because Inara, because she's attached to Eligast, she has synesthesia now. So again, synesthesia is used as kind of a kind of superpower situation. But the moment I saw that she had synesthesia, and also the little god has synesthesia, which is that's why she can also see now people's emotion as colors, is because she's attached to the little god, who is the god of white lies. So I don't know what that means. I don't remember if it has anything to do with the plot, but yes, he's a god of white lies. But that was one of the only aspects of this book where I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested just to see how the synesthesia plays into this book, because like I mentioned in an wrap-up where I mentioned that in Caraval Scarlet has synesthesia, and it obviously played into the plot of mainly of finale, and so that was one of the only aspects I was excited about, and I'm glad I didn't put it down, because I think about 50% into the book, Inara, Eligast, Kissin, and then a guy. What was his name again? I'm not good with names, if you couldn't tell. Oh wait, no, so the guy is called Eligast, and then the little god is called Sketty. They call him Sketty because his full name is really hard to pronounce, but they call him Sketty. So yeah, everything I mentioned about the little god, it's not Illigast, it's Sketty, and Illigast is the guy, okay? When Illigast first appeared, I was not interested because we get through, like, I think I wasn't that focused into the book, so when his POV first appeared, it kind of slowed me down because I was, you know, it was a switch from Kissin, then I think to Inara, or just immediately to Illigast, and it kind of threw me off. But then, you know, in the end, I understood. I remember his beginning because I didn't care that much for it. I thought it was just kind of like one small thing and then he would be gone, but no, he stayed for the whole book. And so when I remembered the beginning, I was like, okay, so his story is actually also pretty interesting. I don't remember much about Illigast. This is the very first book I read this month, and this is also the book that I read when I was the least delusional. But at the same time, after every other book that I read this month, I think this one I'm gonna have to reread because I don't remember much, if you couldn't tell. But yeah, I do remember liking it a lot. I'm still not recovered from the amount of all-nighters I pulled this month. It's something. I remember liking this book in the end, and especially the ending was really cool. I remember liking also a lot of aspects while reading it. I also like the relationship between Kissin and Illigast because there's a romance that develops between the two. I really liked it. The more I think about it, the more I think of like the snippets that I do remember, the more I really liked it, and I will consider rereading it because when there's a book where I'm listening to both the audiobook and reading it physically, I always say if I don't like it, I will give it to 50% by only listening to the audiobook, and if by then I don't like it, then I will just DNF it. But every single time I do that, at 50% I keep listening and it gets better. So I'm glad I did that because I really like this book, and now I think maybe sometime soon I'll probably reread this just to tab and annotate it properly and, you know, just give it another shot while actually paying attention this time because yeah. Next I read Spy Family Volume 8, which was not all that interesting. I think, yeah, this one was also another one where I read very delusional. I read it in the middle of the night because we were doing, within the August readathon, we also did a 48-hour readathon where we had other prompts to read from. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I explained in my August TBR about the whole August readathon, so if you want to know more about that, you can watch that video. But yeah, we had prompts for the whole of August, and then we also had prompts for the 48-hour readathon, and so I decided to read Spy Family Volume 8, and I read it, but at the same time I didn't register any information. I was just speeding through it. I was not in a good space, in a good headspace. So yeah, I can't remember much. I know it's on a ship and Yor has to protect someone while Twilight has to, you know, just I think he also has to take care of somebody. I know he ends up fighting somebody. I don't remember much, but yeah, it's Spy Family, so it's always a vibe. But yeah, this one I actually didn't. I think I didn't enjoy it as much just because I didn't, you know, retain as much information as I should have. So before I continue the series, finish Volume 9 and 10 that I own, I'll probably reread this one first just to see, like, if, you know, if I was okay or not, or if Volume really isn't that good. So yeah, but with Spy Family, it's always a vibe, so I would be surprised if I didn't like this one as much. Next, I reread Twin Crowns for my very last prompt. I read this one as kind of a part of a buddy read. This was supposed to be a buddy read with a friend of mine, Kenzie, over on Discord, but she always reads really fast, like to the point where I have to speed to keep up with her, okay? So I decided, okay, let me just speed this one a lot faster than usual, and I did, and yeah, it ended up not really being a buddy read. It just ended up with me kind of like saying where I'm at and just her saying like, I need to catch up, and then I finish it, and then yeah, she just we kind of didn't really buddy read it. But yeah, we are going to buddy read Cursed Crowns. She has already started. I was thinking taking a break from reading until the 1st of September, but I think I might just have to speed Cursed Crowns as well. If you don't know what Twin Crowns is about, it's about Ren and Rose, who are twins, who were separated at birth because of a war. Ren was taken in by her witch family and raised raised as a witch, while Rose stayed over at the castle where she was raised by her mentor slash whatever the fuck that man's supposed to be. I don't remember. I don't know like the political names, okay? But yeah, so until she is at the age of being queen, he pretty much like controls the throne, that sort of thing. I think it's called a king's breath, which sounds weird. But yeah, so she's raised there without any knowledge that she's a witch. All she knows is that her family, her mother, her father were killed by a witch, and that's it. And so she's pretty much raised in this mindset that witches are evil and all of that, while Ren is raised to one day witch places with her twin sister to take over the throne and bring back the witches so that, you know, they can't be killed anymore and making killing witches illegal again. And so obviously you follow then, so at the beginning you see Ren and her friend, I remember his name. Shenlo. Okay, so her and her friend Shenlo go to the castle to kidnap Rose, and then Ren takes her place because obviously they're twins, so she kind of just has to change kind of minor imperfections, like the differences that they have, like a slight discoloration of their hair and like the freckles and all that. While Rose is taken to the witches with Shenlo, and then obviously on the journey she finds out that she's a healer witch, that she, like, everything that she knew about the witches was wrong and like all of that. And in the end she ends up realizing that witches aren't actually evil, and like she doesn't want Ren to take over the throne, but she wants to become queen anyway and actually fix the thing with the witches. So yeah, and it's a whole lot of chaos, and I wanted to reread this book because the first time I read it, I only read it through audiobook, so I didn't remember everything. But this time I want to read and annotate it, which I didn't do much because I also just ended up just listening to the audiobook mostly. So I think I'm gonna reread it because I speed read this one so badly. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna end up rereading it again, which I'm fine with because I genuinely like this book. It's definitely one of those books where I can say that if you are someone who wants to get into fantasy that isn't entirely YA, because the beginning of the book is kind of YA, like it reads YA, but the book is very much adult new adult situation. So if you want to get into fantasy, this one's really easy because the plot isn't that convoluted, the magic system isn't that like complicated, the world building isn't that complicated. It's very easy to read, and also even though she's kind of thick, she reads very fast, and it's also really fun and interesting. However, in my reading vlog I mentioned this with Rose's POV. At first it kind of slowed me down, like the journey between her and Shenlo to go to the witches. You kind of follow them there, but the only reason I like it is kind of like seeing her character development between, you know, realizing she doesn't know everything right and that the witches aren't what she thought they were, and then finding out that she's a witch and all of that. But I think it would have been better in a way to just get all of the POVs of Ren first, where, you know, you kind of like in the mindset of, okay, but what happened to Rose, and then like you keep reading to get to Rose, and then at the end, towards the end, you find out that like she made it to the witches, and kind of like she's kind of been traumatized by the witches there, which she does get traumatized by the witches. But I think just the journey to the witches, I think could have been shorter or just completely cut out. That would have made the book a lot shorter, but it's still very fun to see the banter between Shenlo and Rose, because Rose is very much like a stuck-up brat majority of the time, and especially at the beginning she's like, I'm the princess, you have to listen to me and this and that, and then Shenlo is just like, nah, I don't give a fuck. And so it's kind of like this it's really silly and it's really stupid. But yeah, but of course the superior couple is Ren and Thor. Yeah, I think his name was Thor, which kind of throws me off because I just think of Thor, the Norse god. But anyway, but definitely the superior couple is definitely Ren and Thor, who are just like kind of tiptoeing around each other because obviously she's pretending to be the princess, and there's a prince that she's supposed to like be enamored with, but then there's the prince's guard who's like hot, and like they keep tiptoeing around each other. And like what I adored is when Thor finds out that Ren isn't actually Rose, and so she's not about to marry the prince. He's not like, oh my god, oh no, he's like, oh yes, so I don't have to feel guilty for it. So yeah, it's really fun. It's very chaotic, but yeah, I'm definitely going to pick up the sequel now that I think about it. So yeah, next book I finished was A Marvelous Light by Freya Marska, which is the first book in a trilogy, I think, a trilogy of standalones. I read this also as part of the 40-hour readathon. I read this in a day. I sat for 9 hours on my ass reading this just so I can finish it in time for the end of the 48-hour readathon, which I ended up getting the time wrong as to when it ends. I thought it was 7 p.m. Turned out it was like 3 a.m. the next day. So I speed read that book from 12 p.m. all the way to 7 p.m. just to be able to finish it in time, only to find out that I finished it earlier than I needed to. So that was fun. So again, I don't remember everything of this book, unfortunately, even though I generally enjoyed this book. So I will definitely reread it, if not next month, maybe the month after, just because it's a really fun book. It's, you know, kind of like secret societies with magic and a mystery involved as well, and it's gay, so you kind of yeah. One thing I didn't know about this book is that it was spicy. So when they start sticking it to each other, I kind of was like, because also the way they talk, I was blushing and I was like, I can't pause because I'm gonna be late. I could have paused and I could have, you know, taken it all in for a second. Not but yeah, I essentially wanted to read this one because I know that the sequel is a mystery with lesbians. So I was like, okay, let me just read the first book just to get it out of the way. And I actually enjoyed it for the parts that I do remember it. I actually really enjoyed it. So I will definitely reread this correctly. Yeah, like I said, it's secret societies with magic and it's gay. You don't ask me what it's about because I generally don't remember. All I remember is that I generally liked it. They had secret societies, it was gay, it had magic, and it had a mystery to solve, and kind of like Knives Out with the situation with the inheritance, where like it's a complete stranger. It's nothing like Knives Out. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm trying to explain the book, but I generally don't remember anything. It's not because it's forgetful, it's because I read this while being delusional, but I really did enjoy it, so I highly recommend it. Next, I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and Good Girl Bad Blood. Both of these, well no, the first one I read as part of, I think, my third prom, and I finished it quite quickly. I also finished it in the middle of the night, so in my reading vlog, you see a snippet of like my reaction to the ending of this book. The Ballad of Never After, I uploaded the full video of my reaction to the ending of that. I will do the same for A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Same thing with Good Girl Bad Blood. So yeah, I finished Good Girl Bad Blood I think a couple of nights ago, if I remember correctly. I think I finished it on Sunday. Yeah, it is Tuesday today, so yeah, 2 nights ago. Before picking these up, all I heard was that if you read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and you've also read Truly Devious, you're either going to be a Good Girl's Guide to Murder girly or a Truly Devious girly. I find myself somewhere in the middle because I enjoyed Truly Devious a fuck ton of a lot. Like, I love Truly Devious, okay? It's definitely one of the books that convinced me that I liked murder mysteries like a lot, and it had some aspects that weren't in A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, but I generally enjoyed. But then there's also a bunch of stuff from A Good Girl's Guide to Murder that wasn't in Truly Devious, but I generally enjoyed. So I like them both for similar reasons, them being murder mysteries and YA, while also having their differences, where, you know, Truly Devious takes place between a case of the 1920s and present day, and where A Good Girl's Guide to Murder has a case that is from 2012, and she reopens the case to reinvestigate it in 2017 as part of a school project. Another thing I would love to like say again, because I said it in my reading vlog the last week, I think, is that I want Holly Jackson to write a horror mystery, because each of these books has one scene or like one part of it that is genuinely chilling, to the point where I was like, okay, do I need to put this down? Because if I don't, am I gonna sleep? You know what I mean? So yeah, I absolutely love these. If you don't know what A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is about, first of all, what the fuck are you doing? Second of all, it's about a girl named Pippa Fitzamovie, Pippa Fitzamovie, not Mitzaphobie. Pippa Fitzamovie, where you follow her in the first book. You follow her investigating an old disappearance that happened in 2012, and she investigates it in 2017, where she has a school project, and for her school project she decided to crack open the case and reinvestigates, because the person who was convicted, Sal, she never believed he did it, and that the circumstances were very strange, and so she decides to reopen the case and kind of like try and figure out what the truth is. Along the way, she meets Sal's younger brother, Ravi, and they kind of fall in love, which they're fucking adorable. That's also the difference between Truly Devious and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder I generally enjoy. Whereas Stevie and David were unbelievable as a couple. Like, anyone who likes David is a fucking red flag, whereas with Ravi, he deserves all the hugs in the world. He has some of the best one-liners in this book, I swear to fucking God. And so you kind of follow her and him trying to investigate the disappearance of, what was the bitch's name again? Andy Bell. Because Ravi also never believed that his brother could have, done anything to her, because Sal was Andy's boyfriend at the time, and he actually committed suicide when she disappeared, and like people started suspecting him. And so when he committed suicide, people started thinking, oh, he killed himself because he was feeling guilty and all of that. But Pip and Ravi never believed that, and so when Pip knocks on his door to ask him questions and like start an investigation with him, he kind of tags along to try and help her with the investigation. And then in Good Girl Bad Blood, you follow the disappearance of one of Pip's best friends. What was his name again? Connor's brother. What was the brother's name again? I don't remember the brother's name, but yeah. Jamie. You follow the disappearance of Jamie, who is Pip's best friend's older brother, while still kind of following the events from A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I thought this was a series of standalones, because, I mean, each book does have its own case, but they do connect to each other in a way that is, still a continuation. Because in Good Girl Bad Blood, things that happen like halfway through A Good Girl's Guide to Murder reappear. So if you haven't read any of these books, keep notes on A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and remember everything about every single character, okay? Because, yeah. Did I predict the killer from Good Girl Bad Blood? Yes, not the killer, killer, kind of. I kind of did. I was like, there's no way it's this character, right? It turned out it was that character. Was I annoyed? Absolutely not, because it made sense the way they did it, and, in the way I didn't have anything else to suspect it was going to be that character, because it wasn't obvious at all. Now that I think about it, there's just one line in this book from the character, from the murderer, where it's kind of like a double meaning, like at first it sounds innocent, but then from the perspective of them being a murderer, you kind of realize that sounded definitely sus, especially in the circumstances that they said it. So yeah, I was kind of left feeling dumb, and I cried because it was very sad, the circumstances of it. It's definitely one of those stories where, again, to compare it to Truly Devious, I don't want to compare it, but because there's a lot of like either you Truly Devious or you A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, where Truly Devious is always like a continuation of the same case while also having like different mysteries within the book to like each their own, but none of it really is like extremely tragic because it's in the past, so it kind of like revisiting it, and kind of like, oh, that's a bummer. But where with A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, you kind of follow, especially in the first book with Andy Bell, you get these stories from people around her saying that she was an angel, that she was amazing, all of that. But then the more you dig, the more you find out that she was actually a fucking asshole and a bully and a god-awful person. And in Good Girl Bad Blood, you don't have that perspective of like people, what they think of the person that has disappeared, because Jamie has nothing but positive about him, but then also all the negative that comes out as Pip investigates, it's out of character for him to be acting that way. So it's, compared to Truly Devious, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is a lot more like character driven. Like, these people, I can generally see them being real. With Truly Devious, it's very campy, so it kind of takes you out of like reality. Like, it feels more like an escape room than an actual like real life case, you know what I mean? But with A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, it generally feels like this could have been an actual case, like this could have actually happened. You know what I mean? Anyway, I still fucking adore Truly Devious. Don't even start. I absolutely fucking adore Truly Devious, and I absolutely fucking adore Good Girls Guide to Murder. Both of them are on the same level for me. I love them both so fucking much. Then the last book I read physically is The Deep by River Solomon, which is a book that I also picked up for the 48-hour readathon. I only picked it up because it was really short, and also, you know, I knew it was sapphic, I knew it had mermaids. I forgot they had an autistic main character, but that was a nice surprise, so yes. And it made me sob so hard because essentially it's the mermaids in this. They're not called mermaids, but I forgot what they're called. They are essentially descendants of slaves that were thrown over the ocean, and they were kind of like saved by the sea and turned into these sea creatures. And then you follow the main character, Yetu, who is a historian who takes on all of the memories, all of the painful memories of their ancestors and like their family members. And so I think it's once a year. Once in a couple of years, they have this ritual where all of the mermaids remember those painful memories and can remember who they are, where they're from, and all of that. And because Yetu, obviously the autistic coded, that is a very like hard responsibility, and everyone else around her doesn't understand why she's complaining about it, because to them it's like a privilege that she's able to remember all of these things while they're pretty horrible things. So while they're doing, it's called the remembering, and while the remembering is happening, she decides to leave them with the memories. And she leaves, goes to the shore, and there she meets, what was the other character's name again? She meets a human girl, and they start talking, and essentially the human girl is also, I think she also escaped slave. I think she escaped slavery, and her whole family, her whole home is gone because of colonizers. And so they kind of have their conflicts between, you know, Yetu not wanting to remember all of that because it's all so horrible, whereas the human tries to, like, kind of resents her for that because she wishes she was able to remember everything from her ancestry, everything from her family, everything from her home, because it's all gone. And so it's very short, but it's a lot. And just talking about it, I'm about to cry because it's so well written. And I had already seen another book by River Solomon, which was, I don't remember what it was called. I'll put it on the screen if I found it. And because also that book also has an autistic main character, and so I will definitely pick it up as well because I really love their writing, and this book was amazing. I love mermaids, I love sapphic mermaids, and it was truly something. It's definitely one of those books where you read it and it's heartbreaking, but at the same time the ending is kind of sad, but at the same time, considering the circumstances, it is a happy ending. It was amazing. The part where I generally like sobbed was where there was a chapter where it's kind of like the backstory of the mermaids. Obviously the slaves being thrown overboard and being taken in. Major trigger warning for this book, by the way. If anything that I just mentioned, you know, triggers you, just look up the trigger warnings for this book, because even though this obviously isn't anything that I will ever experience or I have ever experienced, it was still very, you know, like heart-wrenching. And yeah, just the whole story of it and the whole explanation, I'm not gonna say anything else because it's definitely one of those books where you have to go in, you know, kind of just knowing only what the back tells you, you know, because the whole rest of it, I can't even explain it correctly to make you understand how it was written and how well it was written. It was the very first book that generally gave me goosebumps. Like, it gave me chills. Genuinely. Next are the books that I read on my Kindle. First one is The Girl from the Sea, which is a graphic novel. I genuinely enjoyed this. It was very cute. I picked it up because, again, I was looking for sapphic mermaids, and this graphic novel, like, I had already seen it multiple times, and so I was like, okay, I need a graphic novel for the readathon. Let me just pick this one up. And it was genuinely adorable. I absolutely loved it. It was just really fucking cute. Okay, I finished it in 2 hours. I finished it in one sitting. So yeah, yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this graphic novel except that it's really cute. It's fucking adorable, and you know, it kind of also talks about the pollution of the ocean, and also I think it's adorable because the mermaid in this isn't exactly like half fish. She's half seal. Like, she turns into a seal, and like she has this seal skin that is like really like flubbery, and like it's fucking adorable, and also the art is adorable. It's really cute, and I absolutely loved it. Next, I read The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner, which I read for the, I think, my 4th prompt, if I remember correctly. All I read of the synopsis for this book was that, you know, it took place in the 1700s, like 1790 in London. It had a woman who had an apothecary and who sold poisons to women who wanted to get rid of their abusive husbands. And I stopped there and I was like, Aqua Tofana, Giulia Tofana. Okay, if you don't know what Giulia Tofana is, I would suggest you look it up because it's a really cool true crime case about a woman who lived in the 1700s in Italy, made an invisible poison. Obviously now I don't think it would be invisible because, you know, the science that we have today, but at the time it was invisible, and she would teach these women how to react in the days after they poisoned their abusive husbands, because at the time divorce wasn't a thing. If a woman wanted to get out of marriage, the husband had to die, and so she would teach these women how to, you know, slip the poison into their husbands, like wine, soup, whatever, anything that they are going to consume. And then within the days that the poison takes effect, because it first looks like a regular cold, and so then it's the women that had to call the doctor to check on them, and then when the husband was dead they had to demand an autopsy because it wouldn't show up in an autopsy, so they were safe, and then they could continue living their lives as widows, and they were just like so I read that and I was like, okay, I'm gonna read this. However, it threw me off when we switched from the POV of the 1700s with a woman who, you know, is kind of like getting old, and she has this apothecary with a secret back room where she makes these poisons, and also kind of like these different kinds of medicine for women, and also poisons for women to use on their abusive husbands, and then immediately switch to a POV in present day. I was very confused about that, and especially because the first time we have the POV of the woman in present day, it's nothing but backstory about why because she's in London and she's American, and why she's in London, how did she get there, the whole like leading up to it. And I was like, this is a lot of backstory just all at once. I'm very confused. And then we switch back to the 1700s and we follow the woman there, where then she meets a younger girl who is, I think she was a maid, who came to purchase a poison for her mistress, who has to poison her husband and all of that. And then also they gets kind of a bit of trouble because there's another woman that comes in to purchase a poison where, you know, she doesn't intend to poison her husband, she intends to poison her husband's mistress, who is at the same time her cousin. It's the 1700s, okay? But the thing is, the woman who sells these poisons, she will only sell the poisons to women who wants to poison their husbands, not other women. She will never use a poison against another woman. And so because there's a whole backstory of her, you know, meeting a man where, you know, and she ended up being pregnant by him, and he, you know, kind of like intruded on her trust and gave her this kind of like potion thing, whatever, like this medicine that made her have a miscarriage. And so from that point on, she vowed to create poisons that will literally just be against those types of men, because apparently she wasn't the only one he was seeing. He had a string of mistresses and all of that. It's, you know, it's just again a thing where you kind of like, why do men in general. So again, I was like, I'm gonna give it to 50%. If I don't like it, I'm gonna DNF it, just because I was thrown off by the POV of present day, and I literally couldn't see how the POVs from the 1700s were going to, you know, connect to the one in present day. The way they connected was both sad but heartwarming. You know what I mean? It was kind of like full circle, because then also because of the POV of the woman in present day, we kind of went full circle and we ended up on the same spot, and it was really, really fun, and I absolutely adored it. And it's definitely one of those feminist books, and I absolutely love it, and I highly recommend it. I also highly recommend you check out Aqua Tofana, because on September 1st, Paris Paloma is also releasing a new song that has Giulia Tofana vibes. Okay, okay? Me and a couple of other people mentioned it on one of her TikToks, and she actually did research on Giulietta Fana, and then she also, you know, made a video about Giulietta Fana with her song. And you know, if you like Paris Paloma, if you don't remember who Paris Paloma is, she is the singer behind Labor and also was The Fruits. So yeah, and so she's coming out, she has a new song coming out September 1st, which is called As Good a Reason. So yeah, and I'm very excited because it has Giulietta Fana vibes, and so it's anything that has Giulietta Fana vibes, I'm automatically excited because it's one of my favorite true crime cases of all time. The next book I read was Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong, which was another buddy read with Kenzie again. This time we did buddy read it together, like very like simultaneous, like together, and like I finished it a little before her, I think. But for her it was a reread, so it's kind of like the opposite of what we did with Twin Crowns, where her was the first time she read Twin Crowns, and with me it was a reread. I need to slow down. Whereas now with me, it's my first time reading Immortal Longings, where Kenzie, it's a reread. At first I wasn't liking it, and like it's very short, and so I read it quickly. But like at 25%, I was like, I'm not that invested into the story. It's also kind of like Chloe Gong's writing, where you get immediately thrown into the action, and then later on you kind of get information on information. I'm used to that with V. Schwab, but I kind of forgot that it's the same thing with Chloe Gong. So then I remembered that with These Violent Light, at first I also had a hard time getting into the book, because with These Violent Lights you also get immediately thrown into the action, like you can just only get context afterwards. And so that's also the case with Immortal Longing. So at first I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it to 50%, and otherwise I might just DNF it. I'm glad I didn't DNF this book, because at 50%, which is where Kala with the female main character and Anton, the male main character, kind of team up together, and obviously there's a romance between the two, and it's kind of like a, kind of like hate love. It's kind of like, again, Chloe Gong's usual thing with like hate to love, two enemies. And I genuinely love this book. The ending, I was like, there's no way this is going to happen, and then it happened. But I'm very happy it happened, just because it's a good ending and it's a good cliffhanger. And unlike God Killer, this one I genuinely want to have the sequel like right away. And also apparently, because Kenzie sent me a story of Chloe Gong's the other day, where she talked about how Fireheart Huntsman has an ending that is one of the happiest endings she has ever written. Meanwhile, the ending of Immortal Longings Book 2 is one of the most heart-wrenching and devastating endings she has ever written. So I'm very excited. So yeah, Immortal Longings very much reminded me kind of like of The Hunger Games, but set in kind of like a more Asian type world, where it's, I think it's one kingdom separated in two, I think, if I remember correctly. Again, I read this very quickly and like mainly with the audiobook, so I don't remember every detail, so I'm very sorry if I, miss a couple of things, or like if I'm wrong about a couple of things. But I generally liked it, and also it's Chloe Gong, so you can barely go wrong with Chloe Gong. You know what I mean? I mean, we have the same name. But yes, I'm very excited for the sequel. I didn't think I was going to like it as much, just because Hunger Games type books aren't usually my style. I also have never read The Hunger Games. I've only watched the first movie. But yeah, I think what generally like got me into the story very quickly is the body hopping situation. There's this thing where people who are born with the body hopping ability, I don't remember if it had a name or not, can essentially abandon their bodies and kind of like with their chi jump into another person's body. And like, so for these people, some of these people, their bodies aren't necessarily their own, they're kind of just like a vessel, and so they kind of hop from body to body to body. And there's also, I love how Chloe Gong kind of like wrote laws and like IDs and stuff like that around that, because it's not with a name, it's not with like it's not with a name necessarily, or like with a picture. It's mainly just like with a code that like each person has their own code, like number, where they have to fill in so that people know, okay, this is this person, but they don't look the same. But that doesn't matter, because it's still the same person, just in a different body. I found that very interesting. Like, that was definitely the part that was like, okay, I want to know more about this, and I want to see how that plays into the plot. But yes, it was very fun. I really enjoyed it dude, I have so many questions about the ending. Like, did they know? Was it planned? I don't know. And I'm very, like, that's just, those questions make me want to have the sequel right away, just to know what happens. Okay, I think I will definitely buy Immortal Longings physically, and then I think I will buy every single one of these books physically because I like them enough. Maybe not the graphic novel, because that one I can't have and annotate, but I definitely, The Lost Apothecary and Immortal Longings, I will definitely buy those physically just to be able to tab and annotate them physically and also reread them correctly. Then the last book I read this month was actually, I finished it on Webtoons, but it is based off of a Wattpad story, and it's called Night Owls in Summer Skies. So it is originally a Wattpad story, but I read it on Webtoons and I finished it this month as well. It's a really cute, like, sapphic story where you follow a main character who kind of has a troubled relationship with her mom, and instead of, you know, her mom taking her to her wedding with, you know, her new husband, she actually sends off her daughter to this camp which she hates, and at first she tries to, you know, kind of sabotage herself and getting kicked out, and actually trying to spend I think either go back to her mom or go back to her dad. She has a good relationship with her dad, but like ever since she came out to her mom and dad, her mom has kind of like been putting distance because she thinks that her being gay is a phase, that whole situation. And then she goes to the camp, and then one of the counselors there, she falls in love with her, and it's really cute and it's really fun. I generally adored this one. I started it earlier this year and I just finished it now. I hope there's another season because it was really cute. Otherwise I'll probably just like try and find it on Wattpad to continue if there is a continuation of it. So yeah, so these were all of the books that I read in August. I read 11 books in August. Do you understand that? Do you like, does that register in your head? Because it doesn't in mine. I hope that I'm gonna be able to like get a higher, you know, book count this year, because in 2021 I read, I think, 30 books, if I remember correctly. Past challenges, I read 45 books in 2021, then I read 31 in 2022, and then so far this year I've read 48. So yes, now my goal is at 50, but I'm hoping I can get to 60, at the very least 69. Like I wanna see if I can still read until the end of the year. I can still read 20 more books before the end of the year. If I keep going the way I'm going and like read the way I'm reading like this month, like with prompts and stuff like that, I might just. So yeah, that's really fun. Definitely if I finish, like if I reread Spy Family Volume 8 and then read Volume 9 and 10, finish that series, that's already like 3 down. So yeah, I hope you guys like this video. I know I can rarely really like explain a book, because the thing is, in my head what I'm saying makes sense, but I know that more often than not when I say it out loud it doesn't make any sense. I always try to make it make sense, but then it just sounds ridiculous. So yeah, I hope I made any sense today. I will leave a link to each of these books so you can check out the right synopsis yourself, and I'll also leave a link to all of my socials and my Etsy shop and everything. I'll leave a link to Mel's YouTube channel and her Patreon. Also leave a link to Kenzie's new Etsy store that she opens on September 1st, and then also a link to Steph's YouTube channel, because I read Good Girl Bad Blood with her this month. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.